Okay, so first I want to begin by saying thank you to everybody who sent me kind wishes and congratulations. Baruch Hashem, we had our first child in Eretz Yisrael, a baby boy. His name is Roy Nachman, so I'm sure everybody here will appreciate. The way I actually came up with all my kids' names was I was saying Tehillim, and then often Hashem would give me some type of ruach on what to name our child. So I saw in the 23rd parak of Tehillim, which we say every Friday night, for the Sephardim at least, before we make Kiddush, it says Hashem Ro'i. It's a very famous Psalm, Tehillim. Hashem is my shepherd. I'm not going to lack anything. And then later on it says that even through all the challenges that Hashem presents, Hashem Nachameni, He comforts me. Even, not just that He comforts me from them, but that He comforts me through them. So I saw that the middle word within the word Nachameni was actually spelled Nachman. So as I was reading this, I was thinking to myself of how emblematic this is of Rabbi Nachman for me. That, there are many shepherds, and there's many people who are guiding us in our personal lives and the collective Jewish whole until the coming of the Mashiach. But who's able to make you feel that all of the challenges in your life and all of the chastisement, all of the difficulties, and so to speak, all of the darkness, that itself, Nachamani, because I know it's coming from Hashem, it comforts me. Nobody like Nachman, nobody like Rabbi Nachman, for sure for me. So this was a culmination point for me, thank God, of a lot of meniyot in my life turning into ne'imot, to real sweetness. And so I just want to say thank you so much to everybody. And so now we're going to continue, and I'm going to actually speak about this in a minute, because I want to create some continuity between what we spoke about in the past, in our last class, and my lived experience this past week. And then we're going to move on to new information. So we started the story of the lost princess, and we saw that even before the story begins, there's a concept of baderech, that for you to be able to even experience the story of the lost princess, you first have to be on the road. And if you're not on the road, you won't hear the story. Or even if you hear the story, it won't change anything within you. It won't cause any awakening. The awakening comes when you're on the derech, when you're on the path. And we learned last time that what is baderech? The derech is to become expert in running and returning, based on the Torah and Likutei Moharan, Torah Vav. To be able to know that when I'm feeling good and my mind feels expansive, that I should run after Hashem with everything that I have. And then to return, meaning that when that experience ends, and when the experience of constriction kicks in, that I feel confused, that I lost that clarity that I had. I don't feel like it being explorative or innovative or energetic. I feel very low. I feel very confused. I feel very entangled with the circumstances of my life. So in that case, Rabbi Nachman says you need to be baki, you need to become an expert in that experience as well by learning how to hold on. And that's called returning. That doesn't mean that I'm making those same steps of learning and praying and doing hisbodedus and following all the different advice of the tzaddik in my life in order to be able to get closer to Hashem. But this is more of the experience of simply holding on. That when this gigantic wind comes to try and knock you off everything that you've done so far, you don't get pushed off the ladder. You don't get pushed down the ladder. You just hold on. And then eventually, with Hashem's help, the wind or the wave in the ocean will pass over, and then you can start running again. So I actually had a very intense experience of both this past week. Saturday night, Malava Malka, was also my son's Brit Yitzchak. So in the Sephardic world, we don't have a Shabbat the week before, the Shalom Zachar, where we celebrate the birth of a son. It's the night before. According to the Zohar, a Jewish boy is in a tremendous sakana. He's in a tremendous danger before his Brit Milah, and all the forces of negativity in the world are gathering together to try to prevent this person from being brought into Klal Yisrael. Jewish women don't have this problem because as soon as they're born, according to Kabbalah, they already have received their godly soul, their Yiddish soul. But a Jewish boy, to some extent, even after he's born, he hasn't actually received his Jewish consciousness, his Jewish soul, until he has his Brit Milah. So in that case, he's in a tremendous sakana the night before until the actual birth. So as a result of that, the sages of the Zohar used to stay up all night studying, learning Torah with friends, with a lot of love, with a lot of brotherhood. And through their learning, they were able to provide protection for the boy until he actually had his Brit Milah. So the Sephardim still keep this minhag, this custom. And this is the first time that I actually did it. So I had a lot of friends and family over in Eretz Yisrael. The Brit Yitzchak was amazing. We had different rabbis come in. We had different students come in. We had different friends come in. There was saxophone playing. There was guitar playing. There was singing. There was dancing. It was a lot of fun, and it was very, very uplifting. And then after everybody left, I was going to go to sleep, but I ended up waking up like a half an hour later, and I ultimately actually stayed up all night learning and doing his bodadus for my son. So that whole experience up until the actual Brit, where I was the sandak, and we had a very big, very chashuv tzaddik to be the mohel, that was all running. It was mamish running. It was amazing, thank God. It was something I was looking forward to for a long time. It was the culmination of a lot of things. So that was a real running experience, and I learned all night. I prayed all night. So that's running the ladder, right? So, but then after, thank God, my son was born and he had the Brit Milah, the rest of the week was one of returning. To go from 3 kids to 4 kids, Baruch Hashem, B'li Ayin Hara, is a whole different world. It's a lot more responsibility. It's a lot more challenges. Obviously, he's just born. My wife is still in pain from giving birth and tired and doesn't have her koach. So between that and adding a person to a family, the whole family dynamic changing, it was a lot, this whole week. So I barely got any sleep. I didn't learn as much. Obviously, didn't pray as much. Like all these things that I usually do when I'm running were all either nullified completely or made very, very small. So in this case, Rabbi Nachman teaches it's all good. It's just like running. It's just not the time to run. It's the time to know how to return, meaning become expert in not moving forward, but also not getting knocked back. So instead of going into some type of despair from this experience of, well, I just lost all that energy, that strength, that light, that clarity I had for that one day, I then manifested that light by living with it even though I didn't experience it. And that meant maintaining my joy and my simcha, even though I couldn't do these actual practices that I usually do, just waiting for the wave to pass. Okay? And now, Baruch Hashem, back together with you, doing the Lost Princess. So this is running again. But I didn't get knocked off the ladder. I didn't fall down the ladder. Whereas in the past, I might have got very upset, mad at myself, went to all these mental gymnastics. But instead, I just know this is the time to run and this is the time to return, and that's what's happening. Okay? So this is Baderech, and I'm sure that everybody, it sounds like from our groups, the male Chabur and the female Chabur, so you guys both had your own aspects of running, returning in your own ways in the past 2 weeks since our last class. So just keep in mind that concept moving forward. And now Rabbi Nachman says like this, Maisa, here's what happened. B'melech Echad, there was one king, Shayulo Shisha Banim Uvat Echad. He had 6 sons and 1 daughter. Ve'ota bat hayata chashuva be'enav me'od. And this daughter was very chashuv, was very precious in the king's eyes. Vayu mechabva biyoter. In fact, and this is obviously not politically correct, she was more precious to the king than even his 6 sons. And by the way, you see the progressive nature of Rabbi Nachman here, that in a time for thousands of years in which, or at least the stigma is that the male is the more primary element, you're already seeing from Rabbi Nachman's first story that actually the female is primary and the male is secondary. Okay? So for all the women in the group, woohoo, and for all the men, there's also a female aspect of our soul. And we're going to find out that the daughter is the lost princess, okay? And this is Amuna, this is the Shekhinah. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But we're going to see that she's the purpose of creation. And as a result of that, she's the king's favorite, okay? So she's more chashuv to him than even her 6 sons. And as a result of the fact that he enjoyed being with her more than the others, he spent more time playing with her. He actually was only like exclusively playing with her and not with his sons. Obviously, this is not how they teach you to parent your kids. Could be the cause of a lot of trauma in the family if the father is only hanging out with the daughter and not with the sons, or vice versa. However, this king doesn't care about those social norms, and he's only hanging out with his daughter, okay? So now, what's going on? So this Talmud of Rav Kivak and of all the big Breslov Mashpiyas, he explains like this: Melech Echad, who's this one king? Hu Hashem Yiparach, Shebara et haolam, k'dei legalut malchuto. It's Hashem. In many of the stories of Rabbi Nachman, he alludes to a king. It's not always the case, but often the king is obviously alluding to Hashem. And why is he called a king? And this is an important point. And this is also an important point for the Torah itself. Why is it that we always call Hashem Hamelech? How come we don't call Hashem Grandpa? How come we don't call Hashem the professional lawyer? How come we don't call Hashem all these other acronyms or analogies that we could make for Hashem? Why is it that we're always referring to him as the Melech, as the king? We kind of take it for granted because really Hashem's infinite. That means he includes everything. So then why are we specifically bringing out this one quality? So for this, we're going to have to understand why Hashem created the world. And with that, we're also going to understand why there's these 6 sons and why there is this one daughter who's the purpose of creation. So in Chazal, it says that what's the reason that Hashem created us? So the Gemara already has a big chidush, and that is, so to speak, Kivyachol Hashem needs us. How could it be that something which is infinite and perfect needs something which is finite and imperfect? Because as long as there's only Hashem, there's no one to receive him, right? It says in the Torah that it's not good for man to be alone. So he needs to find a female to marry. He needs to find a partner, someone who can receive himself. So too, as long as Hashem is alone in the world, so to speak, he can't manifest certain aspects of himself. According to Chazal, according to our sages, the aspect that Hashem wanted to reveal about himself, which wasn't prior to this point, prior to creation, was his malchut, was his kingship. Meaning simply that he wants to show that he controls and orchestrates reality. Prior to the existence of man, to the existence of physical creation, there is nothing to experience Hashem's orchestration of reality. Because there's just Hashem, Eino Milvado, there's nothing else besides him. So Chazal say, why did Hashem create the world? That he should be the first and primary only king. A king, he makes decrees. A king, he causes the things that take place in his city, in his province. The king is the leader. The king leads his people, okay? So all of these different qualities, they were, so to speak, only in potential. But with the creation of the world, Hashem became Melech. And this is the famous saying of Chazal that we speak about in Rosh Hashanah. There is no king without a people. And therefore, once Hashem wants to become a king, so to speak, he's lacking. Because there's no way for him to reveal his kingship without people to be able to be led by him. And that's the Jewish people, okay? So that's the king. And as a result of him wanting to become king, meaning to become the organizer, the orchestrator, the leader of reality, he then was perforce necessary, so to speak, to have 6 sons and 1 daughter. Who are the 6 sons and 1 daughter? So for this, we just need a little bit of a hakdama into the 10 sfirot, okay? Now again, what's the purpose of learning Kabbalah according to Chassidut? It's not that we should simply become Baki, expert in Kabbalistic concepts, and then find ourselves elevating in spiritual worlds. But the Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov and Rabbi Nachman and all the Hasidic masters was to be able to take the light of Kabbalah and to actualize it and to make it practical. That is, that I can live with these realities in a psycho-spiritual, in an emotional, in a psychological, in a relational way in my life. And this is the Geula. This is what brings the redemption for a person individually, and what brings the redemption collectively, is when this light from ancient days becomes one in which we can access, and we do so not only even through spiritual means, but even through mundane means, like spending time with our family, like spending time eating and drinking, spending time working out or playing sports, all the different things that we have to do on a daily basis, which seem to be divorced from spirituality. But Chassidus unlocks the godliness which is hidden in those things as well. And this is the purpose, okay? So what are those things that were given birth to by the king? You have the 6 sons. This is corresponding to the 6 lower male sfirot. Those are Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Okay? The king himself, so to speak, represents the Mochin. The Mochin represents consciousness, something above this physical world, something from pre-existence. The king represents Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. Okay? So we see in the 10 Sfirot, you have Chokhmah, Bina, Da'at, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. So you see, even just in the very beginning of this story, the Lost Princess, you have all 10 Sfirot alluded to immediately. The king, meaning consciousness, gives birth to 6 emotional Sfirot, 6 emotional capabilities, and that gave birth to also the daughter, that is the Malchut, or what we're going to see in a moment is Emunah. Okay? What do these 6 Sfirot translate as? They translate Chesed is kindness, Gevurah is strength, Tiferet is beauty, Netzach is something which lasts forever, it's eternal, Hod is grandeur or splendor, majesty, Yesod means foundation, and Malchut means kingship. Okay, but now what does that mean for us personally in our lives? So these 6 Sfirot, these 6 sons, represent the 6 external creative forces which Hashem placed at the origin of existence, and which he orchestrates reality through. So even though we usually think about these 6 Sfirot as being, personal, emotional qualities that we live life through, that we experience Hashem through, they are also the qualities or the vessels through which Hashem orchestrates reality through. Okay? So how does that look like within me? So Chesed is my capacity for love. Okay, so my capacity for love of Hashem is called Chesed. Gevurah is my capacity for awe of Hashem. Tiferet is the manifestation of Torah. So when I learn Torah, that is the concept of Tiferet. Netzach is what we're going to call active bitachon, active trust in Hashem. Hod is what we're going to call passive trust in Hashem. Okay, so what would active and passive trust look like? Active trust would be that as a result of me trusting, I'm living with that trust and I'm physically doing things which reflects the amount of trust that I have in Hashem. Okay? Passive trust, which is Hod, is me remaining silent or surrendering because of my trust that this is good even though I don't experience that that's so. Okay? That's Hod. You see these manifested, well actually we'll get there in a second. And then you have Yesod. Yesod is the concept of the Brit. The Brit, which usually defines itself as the manifestation of sexuality in a spiritual manner, or the mastery of sexuality in a way of utilizing it in order to reflect a spiritual higher purpose. But really, the Brit is a person's desire and yearning to manifest their spiritual potential. Whenever a person is trying to actualize their spiritual potential, that yearning to do so is coming from his or her yesod. Okay? So those 6 sfirot are considered male sfirot. Why are they considered sons? Because each of them, kivyachol, so to speak, is a light of their own. You can imagine them as like 6 suns, right? They all have their own light. However, the Malchut, the daughter in Kabbalah, the final sfira, and with us is manifested as Emunah, which we're going to see is the Iker, the purpose of our lives and the purpose of reality. She, according to the Zohar, is like a moon, and she has no light of her own. Okay? All she does is reflect the light above her, the light of the 6 suns, the light of these 6 creative forces. All of those lights then pull down into her, and she reflects and gives birth to those lights. So to put simply, these 6 suns are like 6 forms of seed. Okay? These 6 forms of seed cannot be seen until they are reflected and given birth to through some type of womb. That womb is the Malchut, or Emunah, or the daughter. Okay? Now, fascinatingly, it's not the sons that the king, meaning the Mochin, consciousness, is spending time with. It's the daughter. And this is a very fundamental point of Rabbi Nachman's teachings in Chassidus in general. This is the big chiddush of Chassidus, that where is God consciousness to be found? Even though these 6 sons are necessary, meaning love of Hashem and awe of Hashem, Torah learning, active trust, passive trust, the mastery of sexuality, and the application of the mitzvot, those are all means to an end, but they are not the end point. The end point and the Iker is the daughter. And the reason why she's the Iker is because the king hangs out with her. The king spends time with her. The king is alone with her, we're going to see. So as a result of that, she is the Iker. Not because she in her essence is the essential point of reality, but because the king is only exclusively hanging out with her. And we're going to find out a very deep reason why in a moment. So as a result of that, she's the purpose of your life. She's the purpose of the existence of the world. That is Malchut, kingship, or Emunah. Now, we know that over the course of history, especially, let's say, like in the past few hundred years, and we'll take questions at the end, the primary dimension of Torah learning as being fundamental and the Iker of our spiritual life is actually somewhat of a new phenomenon. Okay? There was an exile that took place that spread us all across the world. And as a result of that, knowledge of Torah went into exile because there's a huge part of Torah learning which comes from a living transmission. And one of the ways to rectify this was to create yeshiva systems, create places, makom, spaces in which people can grow in their Torah learning in a structured, ordered way, and through this learning to be able to know how to do the Ratzon of Hashem. And this is something that was made famous by the Vilna Gaon and his student Rav Chaim of Volozhin. But because of its primacy over the past, let's say, 300 or so years, people don't realize that this is almost a new phenomenon. And it was a response to a very challenging time for the Jewish world. But really, if you look in the sages, in the Gemara, and even if you look at our ancestors in the Torah, you see that their ways to connect to Hashem was not only through Torah learning. There were many ways in which that Chazal encourage connection to Hashem. And you see even specifically in Pirkei Avot, it says that the Iker is not study. The Iker is action, right? That's an explicit Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. And the Chazal, the sages, say over many, many, many different times that a person who learns Torah, but it doesn't actually transform his inner life and also his actions, then it's better that he was never born. Because we see very clearly from Chazal that the Torah is a means to an end. And so too, all of these qualities are a means to an end. What's the end? Maisa, action. What's the end? Tachlis, purpose. What is the action and the purpose? Malchut, the daughter. Emuna. What we're going to see as well is tefillah. Okay? When they asked Rabbi Nachman, why is it that he had so many opponents? His response is because my whole mission is tefillah. And it says in the Gemara Masechet Brachot that Hashem created something which is hovering over existence. It's at the summit of existence. And as a result of it being the high point of existence, or the tachlis, the purpose of existence, it's despised in this world. This is reflected in Tehillim, where it speaks about this entity which is despised by everybody. And yet it seems to be the purpose. And Rashi says over there in explaining what is this summit of existence, what's the purpose of existence, what's the high point of reality and the purpose of a person's individual life. Rashi says over there, it's tefillah, it's prayer. Okay? So Rabbi Nachman says, by virtue of the fact that it's the highest thing and it's the purpose of reality, that's the reason why I have so much opposition, because my whole entire efforts are to try and show everybody where is the lost princess, how to find the lost princess, and to experience her in our life, because this is actually the purpose of our lives. Additionally, you see that one of the reasons why the Baal Shem Tov, when he came onto the scene, was tremendously opposed, besides all the deep spiritual reasons, was because he started to make very strong points and was publicly confrontational with the normative Jewish world at that point, going to the leaders of the normative Jewish world and trying to establish with them that they had lost the forest for the trees. That in their efforts to try and give musar to Jewish people, to try and get them to grow, doing so through methods of fear, fear-mongering, and rebuke, as well as the insistence of Torah above all else, that the purpose is studying for the sake of studying, not for the sake of doing. The Baal Shem Tov used to reprimand Jewish leaders for doing so. He would go to different communities and he would see that there were people who were getting publicly rebuked by these rabbis. And he would go up to these rabbis after and show them that actually that they were not doing what Hashem wanted them to do, and that they were actually hurting the Jewish people by doing so. Rabbi Nachman used to speak a lot about that the greatest sakana, the greatest danger to the Jewish people is false leaders. And according to the Baal Shem Tov and Rabbi Nachman, false leaders are ones who don't bring you to the tachlis of your life, the purpose of your life, which is emunah. And the way to do so is not through fear-mongering, and it's not through negative, constructive criticism. And it's also not through exclusivity of learning Torah as opposed to actualizing it. And the Baal Shem Tov achieved tremendous resistance from those around him. Even though, let's say a Baal Tshuva like me, that when I'm learning the Torah and I'm learning all these sources from the beginning, right, like say Pirkei Avot, which is considered just like the fundamentals of Torah, it seems pretty clear that the whole reason for the Torah is supposed to be a tool that's used to change my personal life and to change the way that I act, to make me a better person, to help have a better family, and that the learning that I do is manifesting itself in my psychological, emotional, physical life. However, but then when you see the normative Jewish world, you see that often is the case that they're primarily only spending time with the learning of Torah. And even though they're going to say it's not to exclude anything else, but you see that this is the ikr. To the extent that if you go into a lot of yeshivas, you'll see that they're very busy with the learning of Gemara. But if you ask them what is the halacha that comes from that Gemara, meaning what do we practically translate what we learned, all these dialectical, logical inferencing through, so a lot of them do not know the answer to that question. And the Baal Shem Tov was very opposed to this. And he would go into yeshivas and he would say and explain to them that this is not what Hashem wants. Hashem does not want you going back and forth with a lot of this and a lot of this and a lot of this and not actually knowing how to walk with what you're learning. And this is actually one of the reasons why in Sephardi yeshivas, they're not as opposed to learning Chassidus, and they emphasize it more and they encourage it more, because in general, the Sephardi path as well as the Chassidish path, they meet together. Because while the Sephardim are very focused on Yirat Shamayim, the awe of Hashem, and how do I practically manifest that in my life, so too the Baal Shem Tov and his students are focused on the practical application of the Torah, coming through Emunah as well as Halacha, Jewish law, because that's how it practically manifests itself. Okay, so now Rabbi Nachman explains like this through his students. Hem shnei drachim, sheshem yibarach migalet malchuto le'adam. These 6 sons and this daughter, they are the different ways that a Jew gets to experience Hashem in their life. Vehem da'at ve'emunah. So this is a very important point. Just to simply, concisely explain who are the 6 sons versus the daughter, the 6 sons represent das. They represent knowledge of God. And the daughter represents emunah, faith in Hashem, meaning at the exclusivity of felt conscious knowledge of Hashem. So these are 2 different modes of existence. You have these 6 sons, which the student goes on to explain, represents the different forms of Yediyas Torah. That is, let's say, the Gemara, all of the oral Torah, the written Torah, the Shulchan Aruch even, Jewish law, Musar, all different forms and expressions of knowledge of Hashem that we have accumulated and which we have concretized over the course of time through our sages. That's all called knowing Hashem. But then there's an aspect of believing in Hashem. And Rabbi Nachman used to say that belief begins where knowledge ends. So this is a very important point. This is not to say that the daughter exists in contradistinction to the 6 sons, that faith is coming to replace knowledge, but that faith begins, meaning the daughter is only born after the 6 sons. And this is very important for us to know in our life. That Rabbi Nachman was not advocating for foolishness or a lack of knowing. He just was coming to clarify that the final point and the culmination of knowing is believing. And therefore, if your knowing is not leading to believing, or you're being busy with the 6 sons, is not cultivating your relationship with the daughter, that is emunah, faith, belief, which is superconscious, above knowledge, which is drawn from the knowledge that I have of Hashem, that when I am going through challenges and difficulties in my life, if it's not giving birth to my ability to live with that knowledge even when I don't perceive it consciously, so then I'm not actually utilizing the 6 sons. I've made them for me ikr. I've made the 6 sons primary for me, when in reality Hashem wants that His malchut is what's revealed in the world. His orchestration of reality is the reason He created existence. And so when you go through difficult challenges in your life, that you believe that this is coming from Hashem exclusively, even when you don't experience it, then you have missed the purpose of all of it. So these are the 2 different ways that we know Hashem. We know it through, let's say, exclusive intellectual knowledge. That's the 6 sons. And we also know it through this very deep, resonant, imminent experience of Hashem that comes not from intellectual knowledge, but the belief that is given birth to from that knowledge, that when the challenges come in my life, I now manifest that intellectual knowledge, And now that I'm moving into a realm which goes beyond my logic, I'm going to now mavatal my logic and move into Emunah. But that Emunah was given birth to from the 6 sons. Because like we said before, that Malchut, the daughter, she has no light of her own. So where is that light coming from? It's coming from the 6 sons. So just a way to kind of imagine this, you have the sun and the moon, right? The sun is its own light source. Now the sun revolves around, or the earth revolves around the sun. But the way that we experience it is we see, so to speak, the sun going around us. Now, when the sun's moving around, so to speak, yes, I know it's the earth going around, but just our conscious experience of it. So we see the sun is rising, it's getting very strong, and then it's going away, and we see that it leaves us at nighttime. Now, what happens, paradoxically, and concurrently, is that there's another light source that now comes into the world, seemingly. That is the moon. As soon as the sun is going, the moon is coming. This moon, we know that scientifically, it's just like a big crater. It doesn't actually have any light of its own. And the Zohar explains that's its light. Its light, or its consciousness, is that it's beyond knowledge. Because it has no light, and or is always a reference to the Torah, like it says in Avot, that there's no good besides the Torah, or what the sages explain, there's no light besides the Torah. There's no light besides knowledge of God, experiential knowledge of Hashem. However, at nighttime, one must put that conscientious experience, knowledge of Hashem, and he must place it on the side. It goes into exile. It's not going to help you now. Because the nighttime, the forces of negativity are stronger than our limited knowledge that we've accumulated. And the paradox is, the whole reason Hashem made nighttime is to get you to a deeper daytime, to get you to a higher level of knowledge of Hashem, experienced, felt, palpable, raised consciousness. But at nighttime, just like Yaakov Avinu, that when the night came, he laid down, he went to sleep. Why? Because consciously, Yaakov was not able to deal with what he was going to experience with Esav and with Lavan, all the difficulties of his life. He needed to go to sleep at that point. But it was in that place that he went to sleep that he actually achieved Emunah, right? And then he woke up and he said, this is the gate to Shemayim, right? Which Rabbi Nachman explains in the 9th Torah of Likutei Moharan is referring to Tefillah. And that's why the Beit HaMikdash would eventually be there, because the Beit HaMikdash is the house of Tefillah, like Chazal explained, like Yeshaya explains. But that only came in the midst of nighttime. So too we see with the Dam Rishon at the beginning of creation, that, so to speak, Hashem is giving him all these additional forms of knowledge, but then he puts him to sleep. But we see that through his going to sleep, there's something positive that's affected through that according to the Arizal couldn't have happened if he didn't go to sleep. So there are times that it seems like we're going through difficulties or challenges in our life, and this is a hindrance or a barrier to us experiencing Hashem. But in truth, this is a concept of spiritual sleep, that knowledge is ending, so that belief can begin. And when a person activates his emunah, his belief, he turns to the lost princess. He turns to the daughter within him. He turns to emunah that he had built through his learning of Torah, through his gaining higher levels of intellectual knowledge of Hashem when he felt good. He's relying on his belief in that even when he doesn't experience it. And if he's able to do so properly, if he's able to do so with efficacy, then through this experience, his vessel for knowledge of Hashem grows. And then Hashem then brings from nighttime back to daytime. So instead of getting reflected light, the sun comes back, but it's shining in a greater way. And this is going back and forth and back and forth. And this is also the secret of running and returning as well. Because Rav Natan says in Torah Natan, where he's explaining Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman's Torah, he explains that the ikar of Ratzo V'Shov, of running and returning, meaning running to Hashem, learning, davening, getting closer to Hashem, and then returning, meaning me mevataling myself, me nullifying my own active participation in my trying to change my life, to being able to simply sit with belief that what's taking place is good, that really the ikr is returning. So you might say to yourself, how could the ikr be returning? This seems like a barrier to my life. However, if we understand that my running to Hashem is reflective of the 6 sons, and my returning to Hashem is actually the opportunity for me to assert the daughter, that is the emunah, the belief that came from those 6 sons, so then we're going to realize, who does Hashem love to spend time with? Who does Hashem get nachat from? Who did Hashem love more than his other children? He loves his daughter. So I'll just give you a practical example. 2 practical examples. They used to ask Rabbi Nachman, who can we learn emunah from? How can we learn how to have emunah? How can we learn how to experience the lost princess in our life? So Rabbi Nachman would say, go look at Jewish children. If you go look at little Jewish children, you're going to see what it means to have emunah. Okay? Recently, my son's 5, and my daughter is 4, and they were having a machloket in the back of my car. And I was driving them to school, and the machloket was, how did this car come into existence? My son was telling my daughter that people made this car. Okay? And my daughter said, no, you're wrong. Hashem made this car. Okay? Who's right? They're both right. People came together and they took different parts. They took different aspects of physical reality and they harmonized those parts through expertise and they created a new organism called an automobile. So my son is right. My daughter, who had no idea what my son was talking about, because she's not familiar at all with the creation of the automobile, for her it was pashut that the reason why we're driving in this car right now and the reason we have a car is because Hashem made this car. Okay? And she's also right. Now, as this whole thing was taking place, and my Hibodadu later, I had a tremendous revelation that at this moment, my son, so to speak, is a reflection of the 6 boys in the story. And my daughter was a reflection of the lost princess. That really what's happened over the course of time is that everyone, including the religious Jewish world, has gotten focused on that the automobile was created by man. And therefore, everything is a reflection of people, places, and things in our life. We're focused on this lower consciousness, which is true, that things are coming into existence through scientific and through physiological means. It's true. But there's a truth of truth which goes beyond consciousness, which goes beyond understanding, which might seem to be a mavataling of knowledge, a lessening of knowledge, a revoking of knowledge, and an ignorance or an innocence, which was that of my daughter, which was to say that really Hashem made this car. And at a very deep level, she's more right. Okay? However, what we see is what my son experiences and what my son was giving over. Okay. Now, just to make it practical, which response did Hashem get more nachat from? Did Hashem get more joy from hearing my son's response about how the car was created, or through my daughter's experience? According to the lost princess, according to Rabbi Nachman, his exclusive nachat, his exclusive joy came from my daughter at that moment. When my daughter took all knowledge and put it to the side and said, okay, maybe you're right, but there's something that's more true. Hashem created this car. That gave Hashem the greatest nachat, because it was a belief which transcended my physical, natural senses, which actually comes from a deep understanding of those things. Okay? I'm going to give you another personal example in my life. I remember one time when I was in Queens, it was at this point that I made it a very essential habit of mine to speak to Hashem for an hour a day. and I wouldn't give up on it. I scheduled it into my schedule. It doesn't mean I necessarily told everybody this is what I was doing, but I would literally build everything around this hour, make sure that I have this hour. Every day I was doing it in the field, in my car, in my home, in my yeshiva, in different places. And but I made sure I got it. And I remember one day, I was by the way walking to yeshiva and walking back at this point. My wife needed my car, and my yeshiva was like a 45-minute walk from where I lived. So I didn't tell anybody who was doing this, but every morning I would walk there for 45 minutes, or I'd even take a run there in the morning, and I would walk back. But I had arrived home late a few times as a result of this. Especially because, I like to schmooze, I like to talk, and people come over to me and they speak to me on what's going on in their life. So I'd end up talking, turning into different conversations, and I would end up coming home late. And my wife was telling me, David, you have to come home on time. You have kids now, you have a wife now. After yeshiva's over, after you're done learning, you have to come back when everybody else comes back. So she gave me an entire discourse about this, and she was right. So, but again, what ends up happening to me? I have very bad, boundaries, which I've had to do a lot of work on, and I don't have such a resonance with like time and space. So as a result of that, it's very easy for me to lose track of time and lose track of space and kind of just enter into whatever's going on at that moment. And I remember I was having conversations with all these different people who were coming up to me and asking me questions, and I didn't end up doing my hibodedut at that time like I was supposed to. So now I have an hour left. I have an hour left to either walk back home, or I have an hour to go do hibodedut now. But if I do my hour of hibodedut, then I'm going to come back home 45 minutes later, and that was the opposite of the conversation that came out with my wife, and would probably be the cause of tremendous shalom bayit issues. Okay, which is not what Hashem wants and not what Rabbi Nachman encouraged. So now, I was in a predicament. I was in a pickle. So I decided, that's it. I'm going home. I have to go home. Bezrat Hashem's going to help me get an hour later, even though in reality, I know that by the time I go home, I'm not going to get an hour later, and I'm not going to have the motivation to do it later. It's not going to happen as soon as I go home. And I'm about to leave, and I said, that's it. There's no way. I have to get this hour. I have to do this hour. Hashem, I remember what I did. I went downstairs, I locked myself in a closet, and I started screaming to Hashem. I said, Hashem, my Rebbe's told me I need to talk to you for an hour a day. This is the only time I have to do that hour. But if I do this hour now, my whole life is going to fall apart when I go home. And this is not what I want, and this is not what you want. So I'm in a predicament. You told me when my Rebbe says go right, to go right, even if it's really going left. That's for sure the situation, okay? So I need that when I'm done with this hour, someone just takes me home. Someone picks me up and takes me home, because that's the only way practically I'm going to be able to do this hour and get home at the exact right time. And I literally, the first 20 minutes of my hibodedut was advocating that Hashem should find a way for me to get home. And I said that I can't go around asking people for rides now because I'm not going to get that hour. I'm relying on you, that when this hibodedut is over, you're going to give me a ride home. You need to, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to listen to my Rebbe today to speak to you for an hour. And then after 20 minutes of advocating for myself, doing so, I then moved into another 40 minutes of talking about my day, meditating on different things that I learned, thanking Hashem for different things in my life, talking about different places that I was lacking and I was struggling and I wasn't giving my best effort, and also asking Hashem for help in all these different ways. And the hour is up. So Baruch Hashem, I got my hour. But on the other hand, all hell is probably going to break loose if Hashem doesn't answer my prayers. I walk outside and I start to just run. I'm start running home. And as I'm walking home as fast as I can, within like probably about 30 seconds of me doing so, a person who I haven't seen for a year drives up right next to me and lowers the window and says, "Do you need a ride?" And I said, no, it's okay. I don't want to bother you. I'm sure you're going home. He goes, no, what are you talking about? I know where you live. You're running home. That's crazy. Let me take you home. I said, okay, thank you so much. And I got in the car, and literally, I couldn't believe what was going on. Hashem literally answered my prayers. Okay? What was the reason that Hashem answered my prayers? Okay, so now here's a very deep thing, and this is the ikr that I want to come away with this lesson. This is going to show you why Rabbi Nachman accentuated that which he accentuated, why he focused on that which he focused on, why he advocated for that which he advocated for. And then we're going to move into questions if you want to stay around and ask any questions. The king represents Chokhmah, represents God consciousness. At the level of Chokhmah, the light of Hashem is undifferentiated. It's one. It's what's called or pashut, simple light. The 6 sons, they represent midot. Midot, which we usually translate as emotional qualities, but a midah is literally a measure. So they represent measured light. And the lost princess, the daughter, she represents no light. Emunah, faith. Okay. So I might think to myself, what should I be busy with? I should be busy with the midot. I should be busy with the measured light, because it's taking that undifferentiated light of Hashem, it's taking mochin, it's taking this deep internal consciousness, and it's actualizing it in ways that I can experience through Torah learning, through acts of loving kindness, through avoda, through spiritual growth, as opposed to tefillah, emunah, faith, which has no light of its own. However, in Kabbalah, it's taught that the Father, Chokhmah, this undifferentiated light, he is always with the Malchut. He is always with emunah. He's always with simple faith. Why is he always with simple faith and he's not with his sons? So here is a very deep point. And this is what we need to meditate on, and this is what we need to think about this week and try to live with. While what appears to be the antithesis of Chokhmah, which is Malchut, because the Malchut has no light of her own, and Chokhmah is the united, undifferentiated light of Hashem, because the moon has no light of her own, like Rabbi Nachman explains in the first Torah of Likutei Moharan, she's the only one capable of actually reflecting the light of Hashem, which is undifferentiated. Okay? It's one, it's simple, it's whole. And as a result of that, it gives off the appearance, so to speak, that the king is always with the daughter and never with the sons. Because it's only through having no light of your own that paradoxically you can reveal unified light. Whereas opposed to with the 6 sons, the 6 midot, even though they are reflections of that original light, but they are only contracted versions of it. They are only limited versions of it. Why does that matter for me? Because I might think to myself, then I should be busy with those 6 contracted versions, because at least I'm getting a taste of it. When I go to learn, I'm tasting it. When I go to serve Hashem, I'm tasting it. When I do an act of loving kindness, I'm tasting it. Rabbi Nachman seems to be moving me towards this exclusive, primary relationship with the moon, with the daughter, with tefillah, with the Munah, which has no light of her own, and I'm not feeling anything, and I feel like I'm losing my mind, and everyone around me is telling me, what are you doing, Why are you spending all this time in the field and in the forest talking to Hashem? Go learn some Torah, figure out what Hashem wants for you, okay? And why are you being so simple? Right? Why are you not utilizing more sophisticated means of doing different things in your life? Why does it seem like you have regressed to the level of a child? That you're not any longer engaging in this practical, active, superficial level of planning which you need in order to live a good life? Why is it that instead, like a little kid, you're just going to a closet and you're asking Hashem for help instead of just texting somebody and asking them for a ride? Okay? So here's the deep chap. Because as long as I text somebody and ask them for a ride, I'm involved with the 6 sons. And if I'm involved with the 6 sons, Hashem can only give me a limited response. However, if I can gather and muster the courage through the teachings of Rabbi Nachman to believe in the daughter, to live with the moon, to let myself experience the fact that I don't control anything. I have no ability to get a ride home. And whatever appears to be natural means of doing so is only merely an external facade for the deep inner reality of godliness. That is that Hashem is using people, places, and things to help me get home. But I believe more than I know that my friend can help me get home. I believe that Hashem is the cause of me getting home. How do I express that belief? I express it by asking Hashem for it. What is that called? Tefillah. Now, at that moment, for me to go beg Hashem for that response instead of go physically taking care of it, that might seem to be the least responsible thing in the world to do. However, by doing so, I accessed my malchut. And in doing so, I then located the king. Because the king does not hang out with his 6 sons. The king is only hanging out with his daughter. Why is the king hanging out with his daughter exclusively? Because the king is the infinite light of Hashem. And the infinite light of Hashem cannot find itself in finite, limited means. The only place that the infinite, unified light of Hashem can find itself is in a space, in a vacuum that has no light at all, because in that place that has no light at all, it has no understanding at all, it's only in that place that the light of Hashem can reflect itself and shine loyally to its actual self. And that's the source of miracles. That's why Rabbi Nachman says in the 7th lesson of Likutei Moharan that when a person engages in tefillah and he has emunah pshuta, he has simple faith, he has emunah shlema, that's the place of miracles. That's what Rabbi Nachman calls the consciousness of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Why is it that that place engenders miracles, whereas Chutz La'aretz, or the 6 sons, does not engender miracles? Because they're limited measures of light. Even the Torah itself is a limited measure of the infinite light of Hashem, meaning the written Torah, not the Torah in and of itself. We're going to learn that the Torah in its highest self is the infinite light of Hashem. But in terms of the practical learning of Torah, whether it's the written Torah, the oral Torah, or even certain levels of learning Kabbalah where it's just scientific and it's not coming down practically into your life, all of these are considered the 6 sons. And in that sense, you're cut off at that moment while you have to engage in that act. That's the way that you start to manifest it. But ultimately, the way that I get the full living expression of the infinite, united light of Hashem, that Hashem is echad, is only through tefillah. It's only through emunah, peshuta. It's only through simple faith above and beyond logic in people, places, and things. Because in that place, it has no light of its own. Just like your mouth is a space, it's a womb. When you start speaking, so then as a result of that, it's like you entered into the womb of spirituality. Your mouth has no light of its own, but what you're speaking over is light. You're speaking over Torah. You're speaking over truth. You're taking these 6 sons, which only exist in potential, and you're giving birth to them through your mouth, the moon. And when you do so, then you get to see the king, because the king loves hanging out with the daughter. Okay, so we have now discussed the beginning of this story. And Bezrat Hashem, as we move forward through the story now, we're going to understand who is this lost princess which the viceroy is running after to try to bring back to the king. And this is what we need to know for the rest of the lost princess. The lost princess is emunah, is faith. What type of emunah? Emunah peshuta, simple faith. Faith which has no light of its own. Faith which goes beyond logic. Faith which reflects itself through tefillah. How am I praying? I'm praying with the belief that Hashem is the cause of all causes. And he's the one who's going to create whatever takes place in my life. She is the lost princess. So if you wonder to yourself why you feel disconnected from Hashem in your life, why you don't feel his presence in your life, why you feel very constricted and contracted all the time, the reason is because you may not have the princess in your life. even your emunah, your faith, might be still only superficial and logical. And therefore, because you don't have this time in which you have no light of your own, or you don't allow yourself to experience it because it's so vulnerable and it's so scary if you never did it, so then you don't get to experience the king, because the king's only with the daughter. Okay? And Bezrat Hashem, we're going to see who the viceroy is in our life, and all these different means, and why she goes into exile. Why is it that Emunah Peshuta goes away? Why is it that she comes back? How do we find her again? That's the whole rest of the story. But so far we've established the king is consciousness. The sons are the means through achieving that consciousness. And Emunah is faith, or the absence of consciousness. But paradoxically, it's through this faith, which goes above logic, that I'm able to actually experience consciousness itself. And this is alluded to when we wrap tefillin, and you're supposed to say, "Verastich li be'emunah v'yeda'at Hashem," that I'm binding myself through emunah, and through emunah I'm going to know Hashem. Okay? It's through emunah, it's through faith, like a child, that Hashem created the car, and not people, places, and things created the car, that I get to experience that Hashem created the car. Okay, does anybody have any questions from today's lesson? If you want to ask, you can ask. If you want to say it on the bottom, you can say it on the bottom. Okay, so I guess I'll just do the questions on the bottom because everybody is silent. Hopefully everybody's silent from Emunah. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So Hashem is Emunah. Hashem is not Emunah, but Hashem is with Emunah. Okay, so that's the answer. Hashem is not Emunah, but Hashem is only and exclusively with Emunah. So if you want to experience Hashem, you have to find Emunah. You have to find the lost princess, because as soon as you find the lost princess, you're also going to find the king. How do I apply this to when I don't want to do work at work? Okay, first of all, welcome to the world. We are all with you. Nobody likes to do work. So how do I apply this when I want to do work at work, or when I don't want to do work? To understand that you're now in a place of shov. You're in a place of returning now. You cannot run to Hashem through tefillah and through Torah learning right now. You cannot do these different practices that are going to help you grow spiritually. Now you're working. And according to the Torah, you must work faithfully, meaning that whatever they're paying me to do, that's what I do. So I would be doing an Isser. I would be doing something against the Torah if I engaged in, let's say, Torah learning right now, instead of working in my job. So then, but this is not what I want to do. Like I'm only working in order that I should go learn, or should go pray, or help my family to do the same, to connect to Hashem. So understand now that even though it doesn't make sense to you, if you can believe that Hashem is just as much in your mundane workplace as He is when you learn Torah, you believe that, even though you don't experience it. You say it out loud, Hashem, you are just as much in this calculator and these ridiculous diagrams that I have to create right now as you are when I learn Masechet Brachos. You are. Now, whether I consciously experience that, that's a whole nother thing. But you're just as much here. And seemingly, you might actually be more accessible when I go to work because I don't experience you consciously. But I'm going to need to muster up the belief now. And that's part of why Hibodedut helps so much. So that when you do Hibodedut and you talk to Hashem and you say to Hashem, Hashem, help me to feel you at work. Just as much, and if not even more so than when I go learn. So then that will precipitate you doing so. What does tefillah have to do with work and my passion in my work, architecture? Okay, so again, tefillah, like we're learning, tefillah, or the lost princess, she's the womb of existence. So even though your Torah learning is the sons of your life, and you might like dealing with the sons more because you have some limited experience with the light of Hashem, whereas with your daughter, the tefillah, you don't have any. But the way in which to cause that all the different events in your life are suffused with the light of godliness is that in your tefillah, you're praying to experience the light of the six sons within your daily mundane life. And then through that, you're going to be able to experience through the architecture, like Rabbi Nachman says, you have to look for the chokhmah in everything. You have to look for the king in everything. You do that through emunah, meaning mavataling myself. When I understand that architecture is nothing other than another revelation of godliness. So then I start thinking to myself, well, what does architecture have to do with Hashem? Oh, Hashem's an architect. And I start to realize how really in some ways Hashem's even more an architect than he is anything else. Then all of a sudden I realize Hashem gave me the only job in the world that I am actually, so to speak, manifesting the orchestration of Hashem in my life and in the life of the world more so than any other job. I can relate to that more because I am also an architect, right? And then you can find different lights of Hashem which is concealed within architecture that are even deeper than in the learning of Torah itself, okay? How do I deal with fear with people and with decisions? Rabbi Nachman says that all anxiety of people, places, and things comes from what's called yir nefula, fallen fear. Rabbi Nachman explains in the 15th lesson of Likutei Moharan that the way to get rid of anxiety and fallen fear is by elevating fear. It's not by running away from fear, right? Which I tried to do my whole life, right? I have tremendous anxiety. I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, something I've struggled with my whole life. And one of the reasons I struggle with it so much, and we all struggle with it to everybody at their own level, is because I'm running away from it. I think that this is getting in the way of my life to feel fear. However, because of my running away from it, I'm actually increasing the palpability of it. I'm increasing the power of the anxiety itself. The chiddush of Chassidus is to elevate it. The Baal Shem Tov says if you want to experience the sweetness of anything in your life, you need to elevate that entity. How do I elevate fear? By returning it back to Hashem. That paradoxically, through exclusive fear of Hashem, then I stop fearing people, places, and things. You don't have a choice of whether you have fear in your life because fear itself is a necessary component of a life. However, the way to make fear healthy, the way to make fear happy, the way to make fear peaceful, like the Zohar says, that it's literally the source of peace in my life, is when I elevate it from fear of people, place, and things to fear of Hashem. How do I do that practically? Rabbi Nachman says through Hibodedut. That by speaking out all of the different points in my life to Hashem, I'm automatically clarifying for myself that even though it's coming through people, places, and things, Hashem is causing it to happen through them. And when I realize that at its source, like the Zohar says, that Hashem is the Ilata Hilot, He's the cause of all causes. So once I start to speak to Hashem about what's going on in my life, I am recognizing in a very deep way that He's causing these causes. And by doing so, then I stop becoming fearful of people, places, and things. I instead am bringing it back to Hashem. Like just as an example, one time I was pulled over by the cops, okay, because I'm a terrible driver. Something like, it's actually related to the point I said before, that it's very hard for me to connect to people, places, and things, meaning the dimensionality of the world. I'm very bad with time and space. It's not something that comes naturally for me. I have to really, really work on it and create all these artificial means of actualizing it. This is one of the most beneficial parts of my marriage, that my wife becomes my time and space. She keeps grounding me in reality, okay? So, but as a result of that, I'm not a good driver. And one time I was driving and I was doing something else, I guess. I think maybe I was on my phone and I was speaking to somebody that were going through something psychologically. And I was trying to mechazik them and give them strength and emunah, and I was screaming to them on the phone, you have to believe in Hashem, you have to talk to Hashem. And all of a sudden, the cops pull me over. I'm like, no, don't do this to me. So I get pulled over. He comes over, he says, put your window down. And in America, that the police force present themselves in the scariest humanly way possible. They open the door and it's as if you created the worst atrocity in history, as if chas v'sholom, you have just massacred an entire nation of people. And they open the door, the look that they give you because I went 5 miles over the limit, or because I was talking on my phone as I was driving. Yes, it's not safe. Agree 100%. We need to find safer means to do so. I need to work more on it. But the face that is given to you, as if you have if you just engaged in an atrocity which has never been done in history, is something beyond belief. Okay, so he's giving me those eyes, that look. Give me your ID. Give me your whatever. Stay in the car. Okay. So he goes back to his car, and I'm waiting for him for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. I close my window, and I start praying to Hashem. I said, Hashem, 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 Hashem. I know this police cop pulled me over. I know it's true. There is such a thing. It's happening. But I know even deeper than that if you want to, this police cop is going to let me off. Because why? He only pulled me over because you wanted him to. How many times I've been on my phone and the cops did not pull me over? Why is it that he pulled me over right now? It's not because this cop happened to see it. It's because you wanted him to pull me over. Hashem, I beg you, please. I understand that I felt fear when he came over. I felt fear, okay? And I realized that my fear is fallen. And that's why you caused him to pull me over. I'm giving it back to you. I'm reallocating it to you. And I said, if you want to, I'm going to get this ticket, and it's for the very best thing that could ever happen to me. And if you don't want, I'm not going to get it. But no matter what it is, this is coming from you. And I start saying Tehillim in my car, and I stopped. Like, the truth was, I couldn't find my ID in my car. I couldn't find the stuff that he needed. But I didn't even look. He left the car to go look at my record, and he was expecting me to go look for my ID in my car so that when he got back, he'd... Instead, I started saying Tehillim and davening my heart out to Hashem, and he boded it. And I said, you whatever it is, it's going to be what you want it to be. When he came back to the car, he put the window down, and he said, don't ever do that again. Go home. Drive home. Didn't ask for my ID, didn't ask for my nothing. He just said, go home. I didn't get a ticket, I didn't get points, nothing. Okay? So, at that moment, it's very easy for me to just sit into that fear. But if I understand when I don't experience it, I believe that whatever is taking place that's making me scared is only coming from yearn to full of fallen fear. And Rabbi Nachman says the only reason that Hashem gives you these different expressions of fallen fear is to realize that you're lacking in Yirat Shamayim. And so when you have it, to then reallocate it, to elevate it back up to Hashem, and through this, you actually use this experience in a positive way. But if instead I devolve into this fear of people, places, and things and go more into it, so not only did I not handle it correctly, but my fear falls more and more and more. Okay? If a person is not going to get rebuked or constructive criticism, how does a person grow in Yirat Shamayim? So, Rabbi Nachman explains, and it's based on a Gemara. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva, he was bringing up the point that in truth, the ability to rebuke a person or to have constructive criticism, people can't do it anymore. People don't know how to do it anymore. This is the Gemara, 2,000 years ago. We know that every generation there's a Yerida, there's a descent, which means that we have gotten progressively worse at constructively criticizing people for the past 2,000 years. And they couldn't do it 2,000 years ago. So for sure they can't do it now. Okay? Rabbi Nachman goes on to say that when you get criticized by others, it's like, so to speak, you have this frozen poop inside of you. And now all of a sudden you're getting criticized, and what happens to that poop which is dried out? It's now somebody kicked it, and it starts to smell even worse than before. And that's why often is the case when people criticize you, you either don't respond favorably, or even when you do respond and you try to change as a result of that criticism, it often is the case that afterwards you actually go down worse, maybe the next day, maybe a week from now, and it doesn't sustain itself. Why is it not sustaining itself? Because Tochacha is in exile. It's been in exile for 2,000 years. But we know it's a mitzvah to give Tochacha. So then, and also we need it to grow. So how can I grow if I'm not getting constructive criticism when you need it? But on the other hand, nobody can give it to me because they don't know how to anymore. So I'm in this pickle, okay? So Rabbi Nachman explains that this is the reason why you need the tzaddik emet. Because the true tzaddik, he's constantly giving you tochacha. He's constantly rebuking you. He's constantly giving you constructive criticism in his lessons and in his advice. But he does it in such a way that it's so sweet that you don't even realize it's happening. And not only that, even if you do realize it's happening, you want it. You don't resist it. You don't run away from it. You're looking forward all day to opening up your Likutei Moharan, to learning that lesson from that Breslov Mashpia, to get rebuked. Rabbi Nachman says every single time you learn Torah, it's giving you tochacha. Why? Because it's explaining to you things that you're not doing. That's why you're learning it. So you don't even realize that every time you pick up a book, you're getting constructive criticism from the Torah, right? But because the Torah comes from Hashem, and because the tzaddik of the generation is so nullified to Hashem and to his Torah that when he gives it over, it's not looked up as a threat to your existence. It in some ways, it's the opposite. I feel like it's giving birth to me. So then how do I grow in Yirat Shamayim? How do I get closer to Hashem if I can't get constructive criticism from other people, and especially myself? You get it through the tzaddik. You get it by learning tzaddikim's teachings. When you learn the Torah of tzaddikim, you're going to get it, but you're going to get it in a way that it's Kol Yaakov. It's the voice of Yaakov. That Rabbi Nachman explains, Yitzchak Avinu, when he saw his son and he came in and he said, wow, this smells like Gan Eden. What was it that smelled like Gan Eden? So Rabbi Nachman explains, it was Yaakov's voice. But Yaakov represents the voice of Torah, and we know that the Torah is always giving you rebuke. Oh, but here's the beauty of it. But because it's coming from Yaakov, because it's coming from the Tzaddik Emet, it tastes and it smells like Gan Eden. Okay? And it waters you, and it nourishes you, and it makes you want to grow, and it makes you want to be closer to Hashem. So then what do we do? What do people do? So you'll see that when you go to Breslover Hasidim, they only will ever support you. You're never going to hear, if they're real Breslover Hasidim, they're never going to hear them rebuke you. It's never going to happen. The only thing you're going to get from them is positive encouragement and people trying to meet you where you're at. So then how do you ever grow? If everybody's always just encouraging you and trying to strengthen you and give you emotional support and telling you you're doing the best that you can, so then how do I ever grow? So that's through Rabbi Nachman. Right? Your friends, this chabura is not for constructive criticism. This chabura is for chizuk. The path of Breslov Chassidus is chizuk. But when you get into Rabbi Nachman's teachings, you will never get greater rebuke and constructive criticism than you're getting from Rabbi Nachman. However, he's going to do it in such a way, it's going to be so sweet, you're not even going to realize it's happening. But every single time you learn it, you're going to realize there's more for me to grow, and you're going to want to do it. Isn't that the whole point of criticism? What's the whole point of the constructive criticism? That you should want to grow. When a person honestly learns Rabbi Nachman's teachings, everyone sees I'm very far from Hashem. Everyone, even people who have been learning their whole life. But they don't see it as a threat to their existence. It's something I look forward to. It's something that's sweet for me. So what does a Breslover Chassid do? He opens up Likutei Moharan and he shows his friend it. Here, look at what Rabbi Nachman says here. You're not doing the rebuke. For sure, YouTube rabbis are not doing the rebuke. Okay? Not celebrity personalities, not people who make a living off of criticizing others and then making it into short YouTube clips and then it going around and everybody's chiseled into fear and then everybody stops moving and talks about it at the Shabbat table, but nobody actually changes it because of it. And in fact, everybody as a result of it decreases in their spiritual levels. That is not called tochacha from the Torah. This is an avera gedola. This is what Rabbi Nachman says is the result of false leaders. They are not true tzaddikim. If you want real tochacha, you have to get it from true tzaddikim, okay? And from their students who are bringing you to the tochacha of the true tzaddikim. How important is it to dip my pot and pan in the mikveh if they are kosher but not yet dipped? It's very important. If you want to know the answer to how that is, go look at the last class that I did in Likutei Halachot. There was 2 lessons that I gave over. They're each about 16 or 17 minutes. Those 2 last lessons that I gave, the third and the final section of this piece of Likutei Halachot, this discusses the answer to that question. If the tachlit is malchut, why bother with any of the other 6 sfirot? That wasn't really clear to me. Great question. Because the way to get to the malchut is through the 6 sfirot. The only way to get to belief in Hashem is through Torah learning. Right? How does a person develop belief in Hashem? It's not just random belief, right? This is not the emunah that Rabbi Nachman is speaking about. He's not saying that I now believe in everything. No, you believe in what the Torah says. You believe in the truth. Like Rabbi Nach says in the 7th lesson of the Kutmaran, that faith, emunah, is only emunah when it's bound up with the truth. So these 6 sfirot, they represent truth. They are embodied within the Torah. However, the Torah itself is a means towards the Malchut, towards Yirat Shamayim, towards Emunah, towards Tefillah. So why bother at all with the 6 sfirot? Because there's no way to get to the Malchut without the 6 sfirot. There is no way to get to faith without truth. Okay, so I hope that makes it clear. But to keep in mind while you're learning truth, the purpose is for increasing my faith. And this is what we're learning so far already in The Lost Princess. That it's not learning for the sake of learning. This is what Rabbi Nachman and the Baal Shem Tov says, is using these 6 sfirot in a way which is exile-like, right? This is the Torah of the exile. This is not the Torah of Geula. The Torah of Geula is when I'm learning for the sake of increasing my emunah. When I'm learning in order to increase my emunah, my Yirat Shamayim, then I am learning for the right reasons, and it gives birth to a greater level of faith. And I can live with that even when I'm not busy learning. But if I'm learning just because I'm in a yeshiva environment and it's a competitive environment and everybody there is learning and wants to show off how much they know, or I'm just simply learning because I like learning, I enjoy learning, but I don't like praying, I don't like having faith, I don't like engaging in an act of mavatling my limited knowledge for the sake of super conscious faith, that's also not the path. That's also not the way. This is why Rabbi Nachman says every time that you come to learn, it should be for the sake of doing. And it's not even Rabbi Nachman's Chiddush, it's Chazal. Chazal say that. The purpose of learning is not learning. The purpose of learning is Maisa, is action. Okay? So this is the reason. You need to be busy with it in order to live with it. But you need to know while you're learning with it, the purpose of me learning, I'm learning this right now in order to live with it. Okay? How do you balance personal effort with Hashem's help? Also, doesn't the Torah say you're expected to go about natural way of things and expect something, not to expect something to some degree of miraculous or without normal planning? Okay, very good. So, Rabbi Nachman's Torah and the Baal Shem Tov's Torah is bringing out a very deep thing. There's 2 aspects here. One aspect is that yes, the Torah advocates that you take spiritual means. Rabbi Nachman says in Sefer Midot this explicitly, that whatever you can do, you should do on your own. Okay? And then you should ask Hashem for the rest. However, the more that you learn Chassidus, the more you realize how little you control. And the more you realize how little you control, the more you realize that the only hishtadlut that makes sense is to beg Hashem for it. Okay? So depending on your level of knowledge and consciousness of the fact that Hashem is the cause of your reality, then the hishtadlut becomes, real hishtadlut becomes begging Hashem for it. This is not a limiting of hishtadlut. This is not me putting away with hishtadlut. Like many people, when they learn Rabbi Nachman's teachings, they come out like, well, where is hishtadlut? This goes completely against what the Torah demands of us, that we should do about it through hishtadlut, through active effort. It's not a doing away with active effort. It's an increase of active effort. However, it's a reallocating of that effort in emunah, in tefillah. Because I understand through learning of Chassidus that Hashem is the cause of all causes. And therefore, a greater act of hishtadlut would be to me to pray and to beg for help. Okay? If I'm doing it because I'm lazy, or if I'm doing it because I don't want to engage in work, then that's not called the hishtadlut that Rabbi Nachman is speaking about. You know, when you think about a Breslaver and you see maybe he's not working and supporting his family, chas v'shalom, and he's just praying and he's not doing anything else. And if you asked him why, and he was honest with you, and he told you, I'm doing this because I don't want to work, that is not what Rabbi Nachman was advocating for. He was not trying to give birth to an expression of Judaism for Jewish bums. Okay? That was not his hope. His hope would be that you would internalize the teachings of the Torah so much that you would actually believe that Hashem is causing what's taking place in your life. And when you actually believe that Hashem is causing what's taking place in your life, the only hishtadlut that makes sense at that point is to ask Hashem for help. So this is not a mavatling, a nullifying of effort. It's a reallocating it towards a greater means, which is through tefillah. Okay? So this is the answer in general. But in practical, you have to go physically do it, right? I can't pray to Hashem to go be with my children and not go spend time with my children, right? I have to be physically with my children in order to do that. However, what's going to create the circumstances for me to do so? At a very deep level, it's Hashem. If Hashem wants to, I will. Now, obviously, if when I prayed to be with Hashem, with my children, and I didn't really want to, I'm just doing it because I was told to or my wife wants me to, then obviously that's not what Rabbi Nachman's speaking about. I must actually want what I'm praying for. But if I really want what I'm praying for, then Rabbi Nachman teaches this is the greatest hishtadlut at all, and it will give birth to actual events in your life, and even in a deeper way than if you only do it on your own, because if you only do it on your own, you're busy with the 6 sons, and as long as you're busy with the 6 sons, you don't get to experience the king. Okay? And also, on another note, is that the path of the Baal Shem Tov was that this is, so to speak, as a Breslov Mashpia explained, the Baal Shem Tov's Torah is like a shot to the bar on the way to the bar. You know, everybody, so to speak, Kivyachol, wants to go hang out at the bar with their friends, right? Obviously, hopefully it's in a kosher way, but it's fun. It's fun to hang out with your friends. It's fun to just like take a load off. It's fun to move into another state of consciousness. It's fun to do all these things. It's fun to do that experience. It's a nice experience, okay? As long as you do it in a healthy, normative way, okay? However, how do you get to the bar? So in our generation, you can't even get there without taking a shot first, so to speak. Because the anxiety of what's going on in your life, it's causing that you're too scared to even get there. So what do people do? They pregame. Let me just take one little shot. Take one little shot just to take the anxiety off, and now I can decide to go to the bar. Okay, so this Breslov Mashpia is trying to explain, so to speak, that the bar is Olam Haba. Okay? This is the bar that everybody wants to go to. This is the state of drunkenness that we're all going to experience, where we're going to experience the light of the Shekhinah. Okay? The ecstasy that comes from that. However, because we're so far from that place, and because we're struggling so much in our life, with anxiety, with sadness, with yeush, with despair, with all these different things which the sages predicted would happen in the generation before the coming of the Mashiach, the only way to actually get to the bar is with a shot that comes from that bar. So the Baal Shem Tov's Torah is the light of the Mashiach. It's so to speak, like a sneak peek. It is a window into what the Mashiach will reveal to us. Or like Rabbi Nachman says, the only difference between my teachings and those of Mashiach is that everyone is going to listen to him. And what's mashma in that is that nobody's listening to me. However, in fact, it's mashma, it's implied that there will be no difference in the teachings. It's just that we will want to listen to the Mashiach when he gives them over. Whereas when it came to Rabbi Nachman, nobody wanted to listen to what he was saying, or the Baal Shem Tov. Okay? So this is the shot to the bar. And because of that, it's going to start to understand, well, why is the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, so to speak, focusing more on the eliciting of miracles, where when it came to the sages, it seems like they were not focusing on the engendering of miracles. And the reason is because the Baal Shem Tov and Rabbi Nachman are this deep shot to the bar. And therefore, you're going to experience at some small level, if you live with these teachings genuinely, the miracles that will come in a collective, more intense and more generalized way. When the Mashiach comes, you can experience on a prat level, on an individual level in your life. And the chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov is not that this is a nice thing, or it's going to be fun for you to experience miracles. It's going to be fun for you to experience Hashem changing nature for you. But that it's actually essential in order to get to the bar. That we're at a point in history, there is no way anymore to even get to that final point unless you take a shot first. Okay? So therefore, this is Chassidus, to be able to help you experience at some level before you even get there. Because you need that to gather the courage and the strength to leave the values of the secular world, to leave the media of the secular world, to leave all of these things that are pulling at you at a level of intensity, which is 10,000 times more so than we had for the majority of human history. How do you ever get through that and decide, I want to be a frum, Shomer Mitzvot Jew in 2022? There is no way except for a shot to the bar. And if you don't get the shot to the bar and you dress the part and you act the part, you're going to be home on your own privately crying and wondering what I did with my life. Where is Hashem in my life? I don't understand what's going on, because we're in the Ikveta de Mashiach. We're in the footsteps of Mashiach. And in this place of darkness, it's not enough to have what we had in the past. We also need a light from the future. And this is the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. How does knowing lead to believing, or believing lead to knowing? Knowing leads to believing because you need to what you're believing in is what you know, right? So, just like with Ratzo V'Shov. What is the concept of running and returning? Running is I'm running to a greater knowledge of Hashem. Returning is that I believe in the knowledge that I accumulated when I was running, even though I don't experience it right now. So what am I returning with? I'm returning with what I know. What am I believing in? I'm believing in what I know. What do I know? I know that Hashem runs the world. But when I don't experience that, I'm believing in what I know. That's Emunah. Now, if you don't know that Hashem runs the world, you won't be able to believe that Hashem runs the world. And this is why Rabbi Nachman said that the Lithuanians, they say learn, learn, learn. And the Hasidim, they say pray, pray, pray. But I say pray, learn, pray. Because for Rabbi Nachman, he's explaining that these two entities are not two opposite, mutually exclusive entities in your life. But they are two sides of one coin. Knowledge and the increase of knowledge gives birth to greater levels of Emunah, and greater levels of Emunah gives birth to greater levels of knowledge. It's a harmonious organism. They feed off of each other. It's like, in a musical band. One of the guys on his own time starts to engage in more efforts to increase his level, right? And he starts to become more expert. And in the middle of their jam session, he pulls out this wicked guitar solo. And then all of a sudden, everybody's like, wow. It's like, whoa, I like, wow. And then what happens as a result of him upping the level? Everyone else responds by doing the same thing. And then because everyone responds by doing the same thing, and now they had a jam like they never had before, this guy who did the wicked guitar solo, he reaches down and reaches a deeper level of musical expertise and brings out an even deeper level of guitar soloing. And this goes back and forth and back and forth. Okay? So too when it comes to Das and Emunah. Das and Emunah are not mutually exclusive entities. Knowledge of God and faith of God are not mutually exclusive entities. They are two sides of one coin. The more that you genuinely grow in knowledge, the more you will genuinely grow in faith. The more you genuinely grow in Emunah, the more you will genuinely glow and grow in knowledge. Sorry, it's very early by me, and I haven't stopped talking for the past hour and a half, so please have forgiveness for me. And if my mouth is very dry and white from dehydration, also, please don't tell my wife, and forgive me. Thank you. If the tachlit is... we did this. Okay. We're going to take one more question, and the rest we're going to have to take online, because I have to go pray Shachrit. Okay. Let's see here. Take one more question. Okay, here we go. Relying on the tzaddik versus personal responsibility and effort, especially on hard, daily, mundane things. Again, this is a misnomer. The concept of having a tzaddik in your life, or the concept of having a Hasidic master in your life, it is not to remove your existence. It's not to nullify your existence. It's not to nullify your personal ability to affect reality. His goal, like the coach of a team, is to bring the best out of his players. He's not there to get rid of players playing basketball. He's there to coach basketball. And your job is to become, lehavdil, Michael Jordan, okay? So, Phil Jackson didn't take Michael Jordan's place. He never wanted to. He only wanted Michael Jordan to become the greatest basketball player in history. If Michael Jordan did not take to Phil Jackson's teaching, and he thought to himself, I know better than Phil, even though Phil played for 15 years, he's been coaching for decades, and I am 18 years old, then he never would have became Michael Jordan. And he himself says this, right? Phil was not a mutually exclusive entity to Michael. And you are not a mutually exclusive entity to Rabbi Nachman. You work together in tandem. He has greater knowledge of God than we do. Period. That's it. And it's fine. It's not a steer to my life. It's not a contradiction to my life. It is the greatest thing in the world. I have someone I can rely on, someone who has been able to traverse the very narrow bridge from one level of existence to the other end of existence. Now he's trying to give us that on top of the mountain, that full view that we don't have because we're climbing it, right? And our ability to get up there is dependent on that vision that he's providing for us. So what's going to happen a lot of times is he's going to encourage things that he wants us to do even though we don't see it. But that's not because it's not there. It's because we don't have this panoramic view that he has established, okay? However, if you realize he has that, then I'm going to go actualize the advice that he gives me even when I don't see it. And this is how you get the benefit of the teachings of the tzaddik. This is not to say I lose my personal responsibility. My personal responsibility and effort is intensified because of my learning the teachings of the tzaddik. Nobody is doing more spiritual avoda than a student of Rabbi Nachman. Nobody's learning more. Nobody's praying more. Nobody's doing more personal prayer and cheshbon nefesh. Nobody's engaging more in the mitzvot than a real Breslaver chassid. Rabbi Nachman is, despite what is the common notion of what it means to be a student of Rabbi Nachman, what he offers to people, and what the students end up being like, the group or the pocket of individuals which are considered the famous Breslov Hasidim, which is really an offshoot of a brand new, so to speak, extension of Breslover Hasidim, and so to speak, you only get like this one experience from them, that maybe they're just focused on simcha, or they're focused on dancing and singing, and it doesn't seem like they're engaging in all the other things that we've been doing for thousands of years. Newsflash, that's because they're a real student of Rabbi Nachman is not just happy, and he's not just singing and dancing. A real student of Rabbi Nachman is someone who wakes up at 4 a.m. for doing chatzot, and then he learns Torah for 3 hours, all facets of Torah, and then he's praying nates, and he's doing an hours of chibodedut. He's not wasting one moment of his day. He is either engaging in the different areas of his life with his family, with his friends, with his work, or he is mamish and immersed in the Torah and the mitzvot of Hashem. Did I lose my personal effort because I listened to Rabbi Nachman? No, he increased my point of will. He increased my point of free will. What was I doing before Rabbi Nachman? I was going online and reading a Chabad article, every day. And then I would work for 12 hours and I'd be miserable. That was my life in the beginning. That was it. What happened after I started learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings? I started learning Gemara, I started learning Mishnayot, I started getting up in the morning, early in the morning, I started praying and davening with the minyan, I started keeping the mitzvot, I started talking to Hashem, right? He does not take away your personal effort. He increases your point of free will. He increases your ratzon, your desire to act on that point of free will. Nobody who's attached to a real tzaddik ever does less. He only ever does more. Okay? So this is an important thing to know. Rabbi Nachman is a coach for me. He's not coming to replace me. Rabbi Nachman did not want that you should not be you to the fullest. His whole entire life's mission until the Mashiach comes was to give everybody the channel, the portal, the bridge that every personal individual can cross in order that you should be you all the way to the fullest. Okay? Everybody have an amazing, amazing week. We'll discuss during the week ways to actualize these teachings in our life. And please keep engaged in the group. This is a very important way to actualize these teachings, is to talk them over with your friends, okay? Your real friends, people in the group. Everybody have an amazing day, an amazing week, and let's go continue to find the lost princess.